Hey Mom, welcome to my kitchen. Today we are going to be making a red wine braised chicken. This is a recipe I promised you for a long time and I'm finally getting around to doing it. So let's get started. We're going to walk through ingredients, the tools you're going to need, and then we're just going to get started into making it. It's going to take about, depends on how you're making it. I'm going to do it in a Dutch oven, so I'm going to take about 2 to 3 hours to make it. If you're doing it on a stove top in a pot, 1 to 2 hours. Depends on the size of the meat you're cooking and the type of meat you're cooking. But we're going to get right into it. So to start, we're going to go through the ingredients. Obviously you need your chicken. I'm using full chicken legs, but normally I would just use chicken thighs. You want bone-in, skin-on chicken thighs. It's good because it's cheaper, but it's also better for cooking times. But I'm going to break these down into the thighs, and the drumsticks, but normally 6 to 8 chicken thighs is good. You need your red wine. I always go with the Baco Noirs. You could also use a Valpolicella. You just want anything medium body that's nice and fruity. 4 to 5 cloves of garlic, 1 onion. You need thyme, bay leaves, and rosemary. Fresh is always best, but of course if you don't have that, the dried stuff works great just as well. Old style Dijon mustard, and then for the mashed potatoes you're going to need your cream, your butter, and then of course our chicken stock. So that's basically everything we need, and then of course for the potatoes you're going to need, 5 to 6 potatoes, however many you're doing for the mashed potatoes. That's all we need, so let's get started. So before I get started, I'm gonna make a little caveat. There's 2 ways you can make this. The way I'm doing it today is I'm just braising my chicken thighs. I'm not gonna put any vegetables in it. I'm not gonna do anything else. It's just a braised meat inside a stock that gets reduced down. That's basically the gravy you use. That goes over the mashed potatoes and the chicken. That's the dish. The other way you can do it is you can make it kind of like a stew. That was kind of how I made it at the start. There are 2 different ways of making it, but it's the same process, if that makes sense. I'll make sure to add in the steps for the stew where I would change up the recipe basically when I get there. But essentially it's the same thing. You just have to, there's just 2 different ways of making it depending on what you want. So today I'm using this Dutch oven. I'm gonna get it started on the stove top. I'm gonna sear off all my meats, get it nice and brown, build the sauce up, get it to a boil, and I'm gonna throw it in the oven at 200 degrees and let it sit in there for like 2 to 3 hours. I want that meat to be really tender and to fall apart like right off the bone. If I was gonna do a stew, I would still probably use the Dutch oven, but before I had the Dutch oven, I would use this little stainless steel pot. You want stainless steel because you don't want anything that is non-stick. You want it to stick. That's how you're going to build the fond, and that's how you're going to build your sauce. So you want a non-stick stainless steel pan for, ideally, if you're going to do this on the stovetop. If you're going to do it on the stovetop, same process. Get it started on the stovetop, obviously, and then meat goes in first. Build up your sauce from there. Add your meat back in, but then once you add your meat back in, you're going to get it up to a boil, and then you're going to lower, once it's boiling, lower it down to a simmer, leave it covered, and let it sit for until it's done. Basically until the sauce reduces a little bit and you get a nice thicker gravy consistency. Stew's the same thing. Either way you're doing it, whatever you're using, whatever you have, just use what you can, and I'll try to adapt the recipes as I go, depending on what you have. So let's get started. So to get started for me, I'm gonna have to break down my chicken legs and thighs into the 2 individual components. If you're just using chicken thighs, obviously you don't have to do this. But I'm just gonna get started with that. I'm gonna show you quickly how to break it down in case you do find something like this, or if you get a whole chicken and you wanna break it down into component parts. So, I'll do that right now. Okay, so important note before we start breaking down our chicken. You want this to be about room temperature. It just helps the chicken cook a little more evenly when it goes in. It's not that important if you don't do it because it's going to be cooking for such a long time. But definitely don't do this from frozen. That would impact it for sure. So here's how we're going to break it down. What we're looking for, I kind of peeled the skin back so you can see this fat line here. This is what separates, let me get real close so you can see. All this down here, drumstick, thigh, separated by this. So to break it down, first I'm going to remove this excess skin because I don't want it, and I'm probably going to wind up throwing it in a chicken stock, along with the remaining bones I get from this. I'm just gonna quickly take that off, put it with my pile. So now I have full access to this line right here. So I'm gonna start at the top. Should just glide right through and work our way down. Just keep making little cuts. And once you get about halfway through, easiest way to find the knuckle, peel apart. Then you can kind of see where it's separated here. And then you just knife point right into that knuckle. And then you cut through drumstick, thigh, and that's it. Okay, I wasn't going to show you this because I didn't think you'd buy it, but I figured might as well include it. So when you get to the thigh with this part of the spine attached, it's going to look something like this. Now there's a bit of connective tissue that you can just peel off the top, and you should be able to see the fat lines around the thigh bone right here. So what you want to do is just kind of peel this back, because all of this we're not going to use. Again, same concept as the drum. Take the thigh bone and just push. There it is. And then when you're breaking down something, a key thing to remember is fat lines are weaknesses. So you can cut through fat a lot easier than you can cut through bone or cut through connective tissue. So just find the fat lines, peel everything back, and find the fat line, just cut along it. If you feel any resistance, just move the knife a bit over. When you start, you'll probably lose a bit more meat than you would like, but that's how we get better, is we practice. So I start at the top, right, just following that line. Gonna go right through the bone here, because you use the bone right here. I'll put my knife right through it. Normally I would do this lying down, but I'm trying to show you. Yeah, see, a lot easier when it's lying down. And then, so now we've got this separated, and again, just follow the fat line all the way down. You should feel no resistance. That's the key. Zero resistance when we do this. And then you just kind of push it apart. Try to save as much meat as you can. And then I have a little bit of extra skin, so I'm going to cut that off right about here. And then you fold that up real nice. And you've got a chicken thigh like you'd find at the store. And if you want to debone this, I wouldn't for this recipe personally, but if you did, same thing. Fat line here, just run the knife through it quickly, and then just scrape along the side of the bone. And then you can just take this bone out, debone chicken thigh, and that's it. Okay, so now that we got everything in the pot all broken down, basically all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna season this side with the skin on it with salt, and then I'm gonna flip each one of them over and then season the other side with salt and pepper. I'll show you, this is the before, and then obviously this is what this side would look like before, and then I'll come and show you the after once I'm done. Okay, so now it's all seasoned. As you can see, I've got the salt and the pepper on the skins here. If you're doing the thighs, you want the thighs skin side down when we start. It just helps stick a little bit better, and the fat's gonna render off nicely, which will add more flavor to it. Drumsticks obviously have skin on all sides, so it doesn't really matter. But same principle, the bottom side here is all salt. Helps draw out the moisture and makes it stick to the pan a bit better, which gets that fond, which creates flavor. And then the thighs are skin side down, pepper on top. And basically we're just gonna get this, you want this going in a cold pan. This pot I can touch, it's not on right now, nothing's on. And we're gonna get it slowly up to temperature. The fat's gonna render out nicely. That's why we don't need to put oil on the bottom. And then once that gets started and it cooks, we don't want to cook it all the way through. We're not cooking this right now. We just want browning on both sides. So once the skin's nice and gold and crispy and brown, I'm going to flip it, get a little bit of color on this side here, and then we're going to take the chicken out, and then we're going to start building our sauce. So I'm going to turn this on now. I'll say this before I get started with the oven. While this is heating up and getting to temperature and you're starting the process of browning your chicken, this is the perfect time to cut up your vegetables and get them all prepped. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to dub over what I'm doing, but basically going to cut these up. This is also the first part of the recipe where it differentiates. So if you're going to do more of a stew style, you're going to want not only onions and garlic like I have here, but you're also going to want carrots and celery, and then you're going to cut up your potatoes as well as right now. Peel them and then cut them up into like little 1-inch chunks. Same with the carrots. You want it little like 1-inch chunks, not too big, but not too small either, because they have to withstand being in the oven at temperature for a while. So I find usually like if you have a carrot, medium-sized carrot, you cut in half, about 1-inch chunk, that's about good. Celery, I'll cut the stalk in half so you get little celery ribs. Same thing, 1-inch stalk. And then potatoes, I just like dice it up, cube it up into little 1-inch pieces. So if you're gonna do the stew style format, do that now, because once we get to the sauce building process, once we take the chicken out and put the onions in and the garlic in, when I put the onions in, you would add in your carrots and your celery at the same time, and then add in your garlic as well. And that's gonna help build up the flavor as well. You're just adding in more components, and it's not gonna be as rich of a sauce. It's gonna be a little more stew-like. Now that we've got the chicken going and the oven's on, basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dice up this onion, and I want it really nice and fine. So to start, take off the top part here, and then take off the bottom part. And then kind of cut right down the middle. So you have two halves like this. I always peel off the outer layer right now. Some people will dice it up and then take off the outer layer, but I just do it now. It keeps it easier. You can also save this outer layer for your stocks if you feel the need to. You can just put this whole outer layer in, and it's a great addition to your stocks. Reduces your food waste as well. If not, make sure to compost. As always, we're taking from the planet, therefore we must give back to the planet. So, to dice an onion. To start, I'm going to do it this way. You want to come in right down the middle, like so, right here. And then you want to just, doing this backwards, it's a little tough to see, cut it into little strips. But make sure you're leaving, when you're doing this, room at the top. See how my knife isn't fully through here? It's still all held together. It keeps it, you want just about a little bit, just about here. You want your knife to stop right about here. And then, because this onion's so big, I'm going to cut it in two going this way. But depending on the size of the onion, you can do one cut, you can do three. You just want to bring the knife right through. Same thing, stopping just before you reach the end. So now I have a perfect dice, because then all I need to do is go like this. I have a perfect diced onion right there. And you just run your knife all the way through. Nice little diced pieces of onion. This is getting a bit finicky, so I'll just cut it up after. And then once you get to your end piece that's left over, that wasn't diced up like that, just follow the same pattern. So I cut it into two this way, and then you'll see I have a little bit of a core left, so I'm going to take that out, and then just cut it into half, so you get little pieces like that. And I'm just going to cut this big piece that is being finicky for me. And then just the same process with your other side. You just want to cut it right down the middle, go down your sides like so. I'm not going to show you this time, I don't want to do this fast because my chicken is in the background. I don't know if you can hear, but we're already getting a good sear off, so I'm going to check on that. And then you just get your dice size, run your knife through. Once you get to your last end piece, same thing. I'm going to take my core out, just because I don't want that tougher part of the onion in there. Just a little piece here. Again, save it for the stock. It's always good to have more flavor in there. And then you just want to cut that end piece. It kind of fell apart when I took the cores out, but basically if the core isn't there, just follow the same knife pattern you used to make these dice things. and you get a perfectly nice diced onion. Yeah, bud. I want to make a note here quickly too. Because I'm using a homemade stock, I'm going to add in a lot more salt in this recipe than I would suggest doing if you weren't using a homemade stock. If you're going to buy a box stock, they can come with a lot more salt in them. So be careful about adding the amount of salt you add onto your chicken and then also to our onions once we start reducing them. If you are going to use the box stocks, like from Campbell's or whatever, I would always suggest looking for ones with reduced salt. They can be quite salty, especially once you start reducing the stock down. That salt flavor gets really concentrated, so you just have to be careful with that. So yeah, if you're not doing homemade stock, do reduced stock or no salt added, reduced salt or no salt added box stocks of chicken stock. You could also use vegetable stock, although chicken stock has more flavor, but low salt for both. I think that's the key. You can start to see how we're getting some browning down there. That's good. Once you get that, you want to probably reduce the temperature down a little bit because your pan's already hot, the sauce already hot. And you don't want this to burn. You want this to just be a nice golden brown. So I don't want that to become black. I want it to see that color. That color also means we're probably getting ready to flip these soon. So just keep an eye out for that. I'm going to recover this, let this sit for maybe 2 minutes longer, and then I'm going to flip it. This stuff right here, that's the last. I want that and everything. I'm going to start to keep flipping these. Over. This isn't quite as brown as I want, but it's what it is. The ones in the middle are going to be a little hot. So I've got everything flipped. This is the kind of texture we're after here. This brown stuff here. I didn't get it on everything, but it's not the end of the world. But like a nice crispy brown skin is what you want. Ideally, if I wasn't on such a time crunch, I would get everything like this, but I'm trying to make this a bit of a hurry. So I'm doing this. These aren't quite what I want on the edge, but these in the middle are what you're after. If you cook things unevenly, just flip the ones that are ready and leave the other ones like these ones on the edges for better flavor, but for me this is going to work out fine. Okay, so while we're waiting for the chicken to finish, I'm just going to show you how to prep garlic really fast. So, easiest way to do it. Take your garlic clove, you don't need to peel it, just cut off the end, like so, and then smash it. And then once it's smashed, just take off all the little edges there. It's peel sticky to me. And then once it's smashed like this, all you need to do is grab the top, and the whole peel comes right off. Just like that, nice and easy. And now, what we need to do is just dice this up nice and fine. Run through this one more time. It doesn't need to be super fine garlic. You still want a nice mince on it. Something like that. That's basically it. You run your knife through it a couple times, and you got beautiful minced garlic right there. Easy. Just do that with all your cloves. Set it aside. This isn't going to go in right when the onions go in, but it's going to go in pretty well after, so it's good to have it ready in advance. Chicken's looking real good. We got some nice browning on the bottom. So, just going to take this out. That's some steam too. Just going to take this out now, set it to the side, and we're going to start building the fond. Okay, so now we've got our chicken out set to the side. This is the fond I was talking about. This is the fond. Now this chicken isn't cooked. It's not fully cooked. So don't like go to eat it or anything. You can kind of see it's still pink. It's not cooked, but we're going to cook it the rest of the way as it's braising. So it's not that big a deal. You don't want it fully cooked. We need to get this stuck off the bottom. Easiest way to do that, you want to let the onion over there here. Diced up. And then you're going to want to mix these in. So a little bit of salt will help reduce the moisture load. And you can start separating the stuff right off the bottom. We're also going to use the wine to help you glaze this. So if you want to reduce this down, as these reduce down, you're going to start being able to fill up the stock. Just kind of mix those up. Just get it nice and even. add in some salt, just a little bit, just to help draw out some moisture. And then we'll start scraping the stuff up off the bottom. Again, it doesn't burn, it just won't brown. Okay, so once these are nice and translucent, like we've got now, you can start to see how it comes up so easily off the bottom there. This is what we want. We want to start getting this flavor off the bottom. This isn't bad, this is flavor on the bottom. It's a loose skin here, but that's okay. It'll reduce down nice in the sauce. Important to note, if you're doing the stew style now, add in your carrots and your celery right now. Once these onions get translucent, you want those to cook down a bit as well. Not your potatoes yet, just the carrots and the onions. Get some nice color, nice caramelization on those onions. See how we're getting some of that fond off already. Just let those sit just a bit longer. And then from here, I'm also going to add in about 1 tablespoon of butter and about a tablespoon of that Dijon mustard. So I'm going to add that in. Okay, so now we got our butter and our Dijon mustard in. Butter's for richness, Dijon is just for a bit of extra flavor. This is kind of inspired by a French dish called coquelin. So this is just another way to tie in the Frenchness of the dish, the French cuisine aspects. Again, just incorporate it. Try to get that fond off. A wooden spoon works great here too. My wooden spoon looks atrocious, so I'm not using it. I'm using something like this. A wooden spoon works great. Just try to unstick everything. Incorporate it well. Butter smells amazing. It should be smelling really good at this point. Just incorporate, mix, and incorporate. That's really the name of the game here. So now we're already getting a lot of that fond off the bottom. So once we're about here, our onions are looking real soft. You're going to want to go in with your garlic now. You don't want to go in with your garlic right away because garlic burns a lot quicker than onions do. So I'm going to go in with the garlic now. Okay, so garlic is in. Again, mix, incorporate. You don't want the garlic on its own for a while. Maybe have this in for like 30 seconds to a minute. Just get it nice and fragrant. And then we're going to go in with our wine. Again, if you're at the stew, doing a stew version of this, your carrots and your celery will be in here as well. But for me, I'm just doing the braised chicken. So just onions and garlic and Dijon and butter for me. So now we're going to go in with our wine. I want about a cup. I always do a little more. I like the flavor. But because I'm doing the sauce, not the stew, I don't want to do too much. So about a cup. Good healthy carbs, basically. I just eyeball everything. So we've got our wine in. You can see how you can already see this part here where a lot of the stuff is stuck. Wine just really helps get everything off that pan. We don't want anything sticking to the bottom by the time we're done. And nice color. We want this wine to reduce a lot. Splash there, that's good. See how it's already so clear on the bottom, like there is so much fond there. It's perfect. Wine's already reducing nicely, you can tell because when I run my thing through, my spatula through it, see how it kind of sticks there before it comes back? It's already a nice reduction, so we're getting to where we want to be really fast here. So, if you were doing the stew portion of this, before you add your chicken back in, like I'm going to do, once the wine is nice and reduced, that's when you add in your potatoes. You don't want to add in your potatoes before you put the wine in, because the potatoes will absorb some of that acidity from the wine, and then you're just going to have really like bitter wine-flavored potatoes, and that's not the best. So you want this to reduce down, you want it to be nice and fragrant, getting a good smell. It's already thickening up real nice. See how all that fond's going on the bottom? See how nothing's there now? This is what we're after. Nice, deep glaze pan. Just get that last little bit off. Look at that. This is what we're after. So I'm going to let this reduce and simmer down for maybe a couple more minutes. I want it to be almost syrupy. Almost. Not quite. I still want a little bit of liquid to it. But that's about it. This is basically the building. This is the sauce. All we're gonna do after this is we're gonna add in our chicken on top and then cover it with stock. If you were gonna do the potatoes, I would add them in about now. See how the sauce is like nice and thick. We got some nice bubbles. See how it takes a while for it to come back? This is about what I'd add in the potatoes. So if you're gonna do the potatoes, you're doing the stew, you got your carrots and your celery in here. This is the consistency you want. Add in your potatoes now, let them cook down just a little bit before you throw in the chicken. Okay, so now we've added in our chicken, our wine's nice and reduced. When we put the chicken in, we want it skin side down. Now that the sauce is built, you want skin side up. If you're doing the stew, keep all the vegetables on the bottom and just lay the chicken flat on top. At this point too, we're gonna add in our aromatics. So we're gonna add in 2 sprigs of thyme, 2 sprigs of rosemary, and 2 bay leaves. Okay, so now that we got those in there, all we're gonna do now is add in our stock. And we want just enough so that the chicken is not quite fully covered. You need a bit more than that. But just enough, you want the chicken to just be covered. See how this one's kind of sticking out a little bit? I'm just gonna add in just a bit more. I'll show you the final product. So this is what we want it to look like. This is just barely submerged. This is perfect. The reason why I didn't tell you how much stock you need is because it's going to depend on 2 things. It's going to depend on if you're doing the stew version, that usually requires a bit more stock because it's not going to be as loose. And it also depends on how much chicken you're using. The only measurement you are going to need is my chicken almost fully submerged. See how it's all just peeking up just a little bit? That's what we want. This one's kind of submerged, but that's fine. All of these ones are just peeking up a little bit. That's what we want. So what we're going to do now is we're going to cover this on the stovetop, get it to a boil, and then here's another point differential for depending on how you're cooking it. Once this gets to a boil, I'm going to take the covered pot and put it in my oven. It's at 200 degrees Fahrenheit, and then let it go low and slow for a few hours. If you're doing it on the stovetop, once it gets to a boil, just turn the heat down to low, keep it at a nice simmer. We don't want it boiling, we don't want active water, we want just little simmers, little bubbles. And keep it there for about 1 to 2 hours, maybe 3 depending on how much. Really the cooking time depends on how much the sauce is reduced to, and if that's what you want. So I'm going to cover this now, and we'll see it back when it's boiled. Alright, so we're boiling. I'm going to turn this all the way off for me. And we're going to put this in the oven. So cover it back up completely. Throw it in the oven. Alternatively, if you're doing it on the stovetop, just turn it down to the lowest setting where you keep a simmer and just leave it there. Oh, into the oven we go. You want this on the middle of your rack, so however you have to adjust your racks to it that way. Just sit in the middle, 200 degrees if it's going in the oven. Stovetop, just leave it on the stovetop and have the center. Now the most important part. If it's a stovetop, check on it like every half hour, 45 minutes. You don't want anything to stick to the bottom. You don't want anything to burn because the heat's coming from the bottom. Things can get stuck. So just kind of run that same spatula through, make sure nothing's sticking to the bottom. If you're doing this stew style, it's good to like do the same thing, kind of stir it up. If you're doing it in the oven, don't touch it. Don't even touch it. Don't touch it until like an hour, 2 hours. And when you're touching it, just lift up the lid, take a peek at it. Has that sauce reduced down? No? Leave it. Put the lid back on. You're gonna cook this for about, in the stove, I'm gonna do 2.5 hours, and then I'm probably gonna do the last half hour to get me up to 3 hours uncovered, so the sauce like reduces down. Obviously with no lid, it's gonna evaporate more. That's basically it. Neglect is the best thing for this. This dish takes time, so you can't really do this if you're in a rush, but it is worth the time. Anything good in cooking is always worth the time. So take the time, neglect your dish, and it's gonna turn out perfect. So as you can see, we have a nice reduction on the sauce. This has been about 2.5 hours. It's got a good reduction. It's a bit looser than I like, so I'm gonna leave it uncovered, and at this point I'm gonna start making my mashed potatoes. So you want to cut and peel your mashed potatoes, get them diced up into nice little 1/4, 1/2 inch size chunks. I find it cooks a lot faster that way. Just because we're mashing it, it doesn't matter how big the chunk is, as long as it gets cooked evenly and through, Just put it in a pot of salted water. Make sure it's always salted. As you can see here, we have the pot uncovered now. And then for an extra little bit of flavor, I always like to infuse my cream. So on a very, very low heat, I'll put my cream in with some herbs. This one I use thyme, bay leaf, and rosemary. Get your potatoes up to a boil. And then, important point for the cream, make sure it doesn't boil. See how here it's just lightly bubbling? This is as hot as we want to get. I'm going to turn this off and let it cool. Let those flavors infuse a bit longer. Once your potatoes are fork tender, just going to make sure it's fully cooked. Perfect. Take it to the sink, strain it, and then from here on out, it's just making mashed potatoes. So the usual suspects are all going to go in. You want to go in with your butter, your infused cream, or just regular cream if you're not going to do that step. I just like it because it adds extra flavor. And then salt and pepper. And then you just mash it all together, mash and fold until your desired consistency. I like my mashed potatoes a little bit chunkier. I find it gives it a bit of a bite, but you can do it as smooth as you like. If you want it to be extra smooth, make sure you pass it through a sieve. That'll get it really nice and smooth. And as always, make sure you taste. Make sure it tastes the way you want. I had a good one there. I didn't need to add anything else to it. And then this is the final product. As you can see by the two lines, we have where it started, our first reduction, and then the uncovered. So this is what it looks like once it's done. Make sure you remove your bay leaves and your rosemary and your thyme stems. You don't want to be biting into those when you're eating. And then this is the final product. You have your red wine braised chicken over mashed potatoes with gravy and a red wine pairing to go with it. I hope you enjoy.